Well, he was that annoyed that he wasn't fronting the press conference today. We have Todd Grisham back with us today. Todd, sorry, mate, I had to come back sooner or later. I've been shaking throughout this press conference because you've been watching me with eagle eyes.
Well, I'll tell you this, this is actually being rated live, and the female viewership had been plummeting, so they sent me on stage, hopefully to get some females.
Got some front, yeah. You've got some front.
Let me ask you this question, though. In a span of 7 days, you have promoted AJ Pulev in England, Triple G and Szeremeta here in Florida. Tomorrow, or Saturday rather, you've got Canelo versus Callum Smith in Texas, all during a pandemic. You came to go buy a beer at a local pub. What's this week? Where does it rank on your career accomplishments, being able to pull this 7-day feast off?
I think when you're so immersed in something, you don't really take a time to say, wow, and all those things are happening within 7 days. I mean, this first started back in March. You know, I remember doing the Mikey Garcia, Jesse Vargas fight here. You know, we came into a new year having had AJ against Ruiz in Saudi Arabia. You know, DAZN also had Canelo against Kovalev. We even did Jake Paul against KSI. Sorry, Logan Paul against KSI back in November as well. And we were flying. And like many businesses, like many subscription channels or platforms, it's been a very difficult time having a lack of live sport. I think the way that DAZN have bounced back has been remarkable, not just with the US content, but their international content as well. And we were at a stage last year where the back end of DAZN's yearly schedule was unrivaled. And we have to say it is again. You know, when you talk about boxing content and platforms in the US, there is no platform that is even close. And by the way, Fox, Showtime, ESPN, they've all done amazing jobs. But when you look at the running and the international running of the close of the DAZN schedule, it's quite spectacular. And the plans in 2021 are really, really exciting. So I think the plan for us has just been to keep getting things over the line, day by day, event by event. So last week it was just get AJ in the ring, just get the victory and move on. Now it's, okay, everyone's tested here, everyone's passed, you know, Triple G, let's get him back for that record championship defense. Then let's get to San Antonio, let's do Canelo against Callum Smith. Amazing, there'll be 11,000 fans in there to watch that. And then we can just have a breather, couple of beers, and then start planning for 2021.
Yeah, after you get that breather and a couple beers, everyone wants to talk about the possibility of Joshua versus Tyson Fury. But there's obviously Alexander Usyk who could stand in the way if that title, the WBO, I believe, has to be vacated if he doesn't defend first against Usyk. His manager said that they'd be willing to listen to a step-aside offer. If you were his manager, what would the monetary figure be that would satisfy you to say, all right, you two go at it, we'll wait for the winner?
You know, I'll obviously work very closely with Alexander Usyk, and Igis Klimas is, you know, I class him as a friend. They're in a strong position where they know they're the mandatory challenger. But at the same time, we have a fight on our hands, and sorry to the governing bodies, that eclipses all belts. And we just got to be a little bit careful, because you may be on the verge of going, do you know what? Let's just get rid of politics right now. Let's just drop all the belts. Because if we lose one belt, we might as well lose them all.
And then you have to pay sanctioning fees.
Exactly. And step aside. So, you know, it gets to a stage where you've got the biggest fight in world boxing. You're paying each governing body hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now you've got another guy who probably wants 7 figures to step aside. So we just got to be careful, because ultimately the aim of this fight has always been to be for the undisputed championship. When Anthony Joshua came into my office many years ago, that was always the dream. And we will do whatever we can to make sure that every belt in boxing is on the line in the Tyson Fury fight. What we won't be, and what we won't do, is we won't be held to ransom, and we won't let politics get involved in a fight that boxing needs, right? We've been, we've done YouTube events, right? You saw the other day Mike Tyson against Roy Jones do a fantastic number on pay-per-view.
1.8 million.
Exactly, supposedly. If we don't start making these kind of fights, then that kind of thing will become the norm. I don't mind it sprinkled in, but we have to remember what is great about our sport, and that is the best versus the best. 2021 needs to bring us Joshua against Fury. 2021 needs to bring us Chocolatito against Estrada. 2021 needs to bring us Errol Spence against Terrence Crawford. And we don't mind saying fighters on our platform, DAZN, who are with other platforms, because we want the best fights, and we have to continuously try and raise the bar, otherwise people will get bored with the sport and find an alternative. So belts or no belts, you will see Fury against Joshua, but we hope that everyone is sensible, everyone uses common sense, and that great fight can be for the undisputed championship of the world.
You talked about some of those tentpole events being sprinkled in, some of those unorthodox type of fights. Triple G, who's never said a bad word about anybody in his life, was asked what he thought about fighting Oscar De La Hoya, who said, hey, I think I can come back and beat Triple G. And he said something along the lines of, if I was allowed to kill someone, I might actually do it to him. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm glad you said that, because I saw that quote this morning and I thought, did he say that? And I don't mind the comment, because it comes from a gentleman. In Triple G. I mean, for me, that's a very dangerous position for Oscar De La Hoya to be in. You know, any guy that comes back after a long period of inactivity and, quite frankly, enjoying himself for a long period of time, you don't want to be getting in the ring with Gennadiy Golovkin. So, who knows in boxing? I would think that Gennadiy is a very focused individual. You know, we did the Zoom call earlier this week. The one thing he didn't want to talk about was Canelo Alvarez. The only thing he's focused on is Szeremeta. But you can't ignore the fact that these two legends of the sport are fighting within 24 hours of each other, okay? So Gennadiy fights on Friday, Canelo fights on Saturday. It doesn't take a genius to know that the DAZN executives are saying 2 wins means Cinco de Mayo, the third great fight. But Callum Smith has other ideas. I mean, you know, he's our guy. I've promoted him since his professional debut. I look at the head-to-head yesterday and I think, how do we lose this fight? But we also know that Canelo Alvarez is pound for pound #1. He's a spectacular fighter. And getting to know him and work with him, I see this fearlessness that they're willing to fight anyone. You know, let's just take a minute to appreciate the resume where he boxed the World Middleweight Champion, you know, in May of 2019. He boxed the World Light Heavyweight Champion in November. And now he's boxing the World Super Middleweight Championship. All of those guys regarded as potentially the other #1 in their division. They don't care about taking risks. They believe they're that good. So we'll see what happens in San Antonio. Certainly here, all eyes focused on the record-breaking defense, the 21st defense of his world titles against Szeremeta, who, you know, is here with a great team of people. You know, they're looking at the performances maybe against Derevyanchenko or Rolls and saying, is Gennadiy Golovkin the same fighter? Potentially bad news for them. I think the answer is yes. I think Jonathan Banks and all their strength team doing great work here in Miami, and I think you're going to see a brutal fight on Friday.
Just a couple more questions as we await our co-main event to enter the press.
That's a great fight as well, by the way.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on your co-main event?
Well, I think, you know, Akhmedov against Gongora is a great fight, and I think it's the perfect time for Ali to step up now. You know, he's fighting a 19-0 dangerous puncher who's extremely tough. This is for the IBO Super Middleweight Championship of the world.
Amateur success too.
Exactly, and I think this is the kind of fights we need, you know, on the undercard. And this is what I said to Reshat Mati earlier. It's so exciting when you get a fighter that's ready. We're going to find out. Ali Akhmedov may be a future unified 168-pound world champion. Gennadiy Golovkin, the team, speaks so highly of him. But on Friday, we find out, are you actually the next big thing? Because Gongora will test him every step of the way.
You've talked about how much you appreciate what the UFC is able to do by consolidating their fighters and forcing fights to happen. If you were in charge of all of boxing, how many weight classes would you be, or would you have, and how many belts would you have?
I think the dream of every boxing fan and every promoter, you know, when you look at the UFC model, I get very jealous because you have the ability to make the best be the best consecutively without little argument. I don't think we'll ever get to that stage in boxing. But belts can provide a problem, but they can also provide an opportunity. You know, I think everyone would say if we had one belt, we would just know who the best was. But that system only works if there's one umbrella letting everybody fight the best.
Forcing the fight.
Exactly. You know, and you look at the classic example, of course, is the welterweight division at the moment with Crawford against Spence. I mean, they're both wasting each other's time. No one wants to see them fight anybody else except each other. So find a way to get it done. Sometimes fights aren't quite big enough to quash the egos and the politics, and that might be one of them. But when you talk about weight classes, divisions, and belts, you know, I think the ultimate goal is for one belt in one division. But only if you have the ability for the best to fight the best consistently. If not, having 4 championships, or 5 if you include the IBO, does allow other fighters to get opportunities to win world championships. So It's difficult. I just think that every sport is under pressure right now to deliver value for fans, and more importantly, in a business sense, to broadcasters. And if we don't pull our finger out and start making these great fights, boxing will die, or broadcasters will pay out, and then me and you will be out of a job, Todd. You know, I don't know who first, but I don't want to be out of a job. I love this sport.
Well, you could fire me, so I assume you'd fire me before
No, you're
yourself.
right, yeah, but I'm not going to. We're going to go down together, but we're not going to go down because we're going to make these great fights. The schedule in 2021 is looking so strong for DAZN internationally. Of course, with this global product now, it was fascinating to see the numbers flow in from the AJ fight in different territories. And there's so many unearthed territories out there that have so much potential for boxing. And this model, this platform, this global service will give us the opportunity. Who knew there were so many hundreds of thousands of people in Bulgaria ready to subscribe to DAZN? Well, last week they did. And, you know, it's very exciting.
Who is the best promoter and boxer besides yourself?
Well, I mean, I think from a promotional point of view, I have to give a huge amount of credit to Bob Arum. You know, Bob Arum, you know, Don King, ethically, may not be everyone's cup of tea. But what Don did very well was, when there was a Don King fight, you knew he was in town, right? And I think to be a promoter, you do have to be a showman. Bob Arum has consistently passed the test of time. Don King is still going. In fact, I was arguing with him 2 weeks ago trying to get one of his heavyweights on the card. But Bob Arum has been at the top for a long time. You know, I think Top Rank are a great company. I think Bob Arum is a great promoter, but he is 89. You know,
You said some really nasty things about him over the years.
No, but only in reply.
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
but I respect Bob Arum. I don't think he really knows, you know, a great deal about the audience that is currently tuned in to boxing, to MMA, certainly to the YouTube world. But he is a very smart man. He's a boxing man through and through, and you know, I think he runs a great business.
I'm getting the rap side. So one final question. You're very popular in the UK. Who is it easier?
There's a lot of people who disagree with you.
Okay, popular. I didn't say loved. I
Yeah,
said,
true. Yeah.
Maybe infamous is a better
Yeah.
word. Who would it be easier for you to get a sit-down chat with, the Queen of England or Al Haymon?
Well, that's a good question. I think you see more of the Queen of England. That's the problem. Yeah. I mean, I think Al's got this great sort of mysteriousness, you know. But it's quite clever, because if you ever get a call from Al Haymon...
Have you met him in person?
Yes, I have. Yeah, a number of times.
So he's real?
He's real. Well, unless it wasn't Al Haymon.
We don't
No,
know.
I mean, you could have just pretended it was. You know, exactly. But what always makes me laugh about some Al Haymon fighters is they go into the change room after, and I've promoted some fighters who are managed by Al. Another very smart man. And someone comes in and says, you know, it's actually, the one I'm thinking of is James DeGale. So I think it was Sam Watson or someone come in and says, is Al on the phone? And the fighter goes, wow, Al's on the phone? Yeah. And he picks it up and he goes into the toilet and he's like, you know, he comes out, he says, that was Al. He said, I box really well. I'm like, I mean, possibly it wasn't even Al. And if it was, maybe he wasn't even watching. But he's created that persona where, you know, for the fighter it means a lot, and that's very clever.
All right, well, thanks for the chat. I know you got to move on. Congratulations on setting all this up, and good luck this week.
Thank you.